Okay. Niema.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful and honored to be a part of this week. And Leah, your praise is rainfall and starlight and all of the wonderful things. I had a similar experience when we first met that at that summit, and had a deep like soul kindred remembrance, and just felt like, oh, I need to work with that person. And I love that, two years later, here we are. It's yeah, I'm very grateful to be here. And that bio, I didn't realize you were going to read it again, but I love that you did, because it is an example for me of pardon me, the intention of today's mini class, of finding that place where what is factually true and what we intend to be metaphorically true, mythologically true, overlap and intersect. So, as I understand it, one of the purposes of the storyteller, the bard, the troubadour, the griot, the keeper of the words that have informed how reality is woven, is to be a bridge, is to be a way shore or a door opener, and to say, okay, so this is what is happening and what is happening. And also, there is this web of meaning, this world of possibility, if we just turn our heads a little bit this way, if we just breathe a little bit deeper. So with that, I want to name and invite and invoke the presence of the more than human and beyond human voices that guide and empower and support us. For me, it is in fact the trees I can see out my window and the still wild rivers that nourish my spirit. It is the energy of Mercury and Merlin and the ones who kept stories in quiet corners in the bows of ships, and the ones who whispered around campfires in ancient caverns, and even probably last night somewhere, and the living remembrance and dynamic transmission of human wisdom, and more than human wisdom, the wisdom of the web of life that we express through these words, this imperfect medium that can only ever be a shadow, only ever a lie with which we do our best to tell the truth. And still, I give gratitude to our facility for language, for these facile tongues and complex brains, for these eyes that take in so much information, and our nervous systems that filter them, and our deep ancestral and cultural longing to express the both unique and meta, the intrapersonal inside of ourselves and interpersonal and beyond personal experience of being alive, that we can never fully express, and yet it is the ongoing quest to express that is part of what makes us human. I give gratitude to each of you for being here, and all of your guides and guardians and wisdoms that whisper to you through all of the miasma of technology to say, be here in this moment, whether you're watching now or in some future moment in a recording. Whatever in you listened, whatever the place where what is listening within you meets the wider wisdom and web and long continuum of teachers and storytellers. Somewhere in some aspect of the multiverse, we are all sitting around a fire, cracking jokes, making shapes on the cave walls, and telling the stories that keep us alive and connected. I invite you, wherever you are, to notice your breath a little bit more. This most intimate companion that was with us from the moment we were born and will be with us until we no longer inhabit these bodies. That is one of the most intimate experiences we have, and we have some like 26,000 a day. That is such an important physical connection. You can feel your belly expand and release with breath. Notice how the air is a little cooler as you inhale, coming in through your nostrils, a little warmer as you exhale. How the breath calms and soothes us, how it supports metabolism and integration and circulation. And is also a way that we again and again reattune to the rhythmic pulse of all that lives, the contraction and expansion, the ebb and flow, rise and fall, birth, growth, decay, death, decomposition, and rebirth cycle of all that lives. We get to practice this and reattune with the natural rhythm with every breath we take. Thousands and thousands of opportunities to come home every day. Wherever you are, maybe you can allow a little more space for the breath. Maybe your shoulders can soften. Maybe your jaw can release. Maybe you can yawn or moan or hum or tone or whatever's going to allow the actual surface muscles of your abdomen to soften a little bit. More of this beautiful apparatus of abdomen and diaphragm and lung and ribs engaging together. And eventually, we remember how to breathe the way babies breathe, the way wild animals breathe, with our entire bodies. And that brings us a little bit closer to coherence. But for now, it can help to focus on just letting the breath drop into your belly, supporting you to be more present and more both receptive of the transmission that can come through in this moment, as well as discerning, both permeable in intentional ways. And just like the breath, our words have the potential to be, we could say, unconscious or conscious, intentional or automatic. And in default world, for those of us, most of us here, I imagine, have English as our primary language, or at least the verbal language we use most frequently. And English is an amalgam, it's a melting pot language, and it has the modern English that we know of today has come to being right in step with colonization. In fact, it has been used as a tool of oppression, when people coming to take one thing or another want to control the indigenous people. One of the first things they do is make them learn the imperial language, and they take their dances and tell them to stop telling stories and practicing their traditional ways. And that might not always be conscious, but it is intentional to attempt forgetting. And it really is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, really, that so many indigenous languages remain, even though we've lost so many. The fact that so many are still kicking on with the last 20 or 50 speakers is really there's a miracle isn't quite the word. There's a deep strength to that holding on, and that way that words have been passed, as I named in the invocation, quietly around campfires and closed rooms, whatever was needed to keep the stories alive. But that possibility for words to be like breath, intentional or automatic, is a really interesting gift. So a lot of our processes within our bodies are automatic. We could maybe make them not happen, but eventually we're going to blink, or even we'll fall asleep. There's some things that that do have to happen while we're alive. It's part of the physical experience of a body made of matter. And also the way we've evolved to have such complex thinking and such ability to make so many sounds. I've gotten to spend some time with my friend's little one, who's now 2.5 years old, and watching her learn how to human, but be able to mimic every sound she hears. And I forget the number, but I know that babies are born able to create any sound that humans can make. And then through watching and listening to and learning from their caregivers, they actually lose some of that and pare down and like focus in on what is actually the communication for the humans that they're being raised around. But that capacity is within us all, and we were born with it. And it's a gift, it's a tool, it's a magical implement that enables us to not just communicate with each other the logistic commands, we could say, or units of measurement, or things to build, the rational, but that we can communicate in imagery and abstract thought, and through imagination bring into being what we cannot yet see through our words. And it can also, which is I think very commonplace today, just become automatic, just become secondhand. We there's a lot of movement in this tech generation to just use emojis and shorthand, and I can be a very I want a word other than long-winded. I can be a very vivid speaker and attempt to find preciseness, and also communicate to the point that I feel like the image has been presented. And sometimes in like apps that are supposed to help you with your grammar, they'll be like, this is wordy, and I'm like, I know it's wordy, it's intentionally wordy, but there is this kind of movement towards simplicity, which on the one hand I appreciate. Like, it's important to be able to communicate your ideas in a way that other people can understand, that bridge, that door opener. Don't want to be it's more, I would say, generous and effective to be able to communicate in a way that others can understand you. And also, I feel like part of at least my purpose as poet, and I see this in many of the poets and storytellers that I encounter, is to keep certain ideas and language alive, and to keep alive the sense of possibility and the remembrance that we have these tools, that we have an entire palette of colors, and with that we can paint any picture given enough time and skill. And that the meanings may change over time, and yet the gems, the images, worlds that are held within the stories that we tell can remain alive through how we tell them. Part of how I teach, and you'll see this if you join us for the course that starts on Monday, is I have an outline, and then I've learned to allow moments of space to see what comes through. So if there's a moment of quiet, it's because I'm listening for what the next true thing is. I feel like this moment, I want to speak a little bit about the energy that I have come to call the muse, and I will dive into this so much more starting next week in the Charming Your Muse class. But the snippet for this moment is, I understand the muse to be that part of ourselves that actually is the doorway between the personal and the transpersonal. So I named that, storytellers are kind of that for the humans. The muse is the energy behind that. And in different cultures, that energy has been called different things. I think one of the most well-known other words for that is where we get the word genius or genie, and not in the sense of, a person being trapped in a lamp as is in the stories, but the jinn, the genie, the muse, the daemon is also called in, I believe that's Greek, that is this personified as a being. The word muse we get from, I think, also Greek, museo. And there were stories told of these 9 sisters who each was overseeing a particular aspect. There was a muse of epic poetry and a muse of song and a muse of dance. And they were given particular traits and a personality. And I think even those stories were pointing towards something to try to help our minds understand a concept that is really, we can only partially ever understand. But that, as I understand it, that energy of the muse is what whispers to us the first line of the poem, is what flashes the image that then can become the painting, that the image is a blend of something we've seen in real life, or many things we've seen in real life, and some sense of possibility. I feel like the muse lives just a half second ahead of us, saying, here, you could try this. Here, you could try this. Here, you could try this. And is both a uniquely personal energy that is connected to our history and our culture and our particular experiences, and also is connected to every other, more than artist, every other human that thinks and breathes and speaks and writes and dances. The image that I'm getting to help it be communicated to a more modern audience is like the way a telephone wire or a fiber optic cable are now each connected to our individual houses or our businesses, and to the router, and that router then sends the Wi-Fi signals to our phones and our computers. And so we get information that is specifically to our unique devices, whether that devices are, our brains and our nervous systems or the little screens in our hand. But we are not that fiber optic cable. That cable is then connected to the vast network of cables that run all over the planet, and the information is shared, and anyone at any point can tune into that vast network and receive information or learn something, but they've got to turn the device on. They've got to open up to it. And so part of our creative process, part of are really our sanity making as people who have all of this information coming to us and also are designed to create. We're made to create. And what enables us to be able to create is to learn what our on switch is. How do we connect individually to that flow of creativity? I sometimes envision creativity also as a river that's always running. And our work is to learn our unique path to the riverbank so we can swim in it, so we can drink from it. We're not making up the river. We don't create creativity. It's a flow, it's a force that we open to and we allow and we channel. And our skill building practices, increasing our vocabulary, learning color theory, learning how to, playing scales on the instrument so we develop more skill in our hands, reading technical books, taking classes, all of that enables us to more carefully sip from the river, to more precisely have what we actually manifest in the shared reality of this world match the image and the vision that comes through us. And that is part of the pain, honestly, of someone who has dedicated their life to art, or even hasn't fully dedicated, but just wants to be making art, is that what we can see and hear and what we can do, actually the skill that we have to make something, often has a vast gulf, and it's the work of a lifetime to improve that skill to reach the point where you can make the thing that you can see or feel or hear inside of you. And so that's where we meet the muse, is in that skill building, in that dedication, in that showing up to the page or the instrument or the canvas again and again and again, even if we feel frustrated or uncertain, or we're trying to solve the problem, the moments where it's not maybe immediately fun, but is serving that longer term, deep, authentic pleasure. Part of how we meet the muse, a part of our work, is also in that discernment, especially in this world where there's so many distractions and so much noise. And we have the double-edged sword of being able to access any information, with limits and censorship, but so much more information than we could access even a generation ago. And the it's value neutral. It's not good or bad. There's so much, and we're able to learn skills that we would have had to travel to the other side of the world and apprentice for 10 years. We can now watch a YouTube video about it or something, but also our attention is being bought and sold and stolen and shortened. And so I think one of our most important skills to build right now is actually focus, and to remember that motivation follows action, actually, and that where we put our attention is where our energy will go and what we will grow. That attention is a kind of currency or a kind of food, and that we get to practice, gentle vigilance and sweet determination with where we place it, because it is limited. And as someone who is learning more and more about my neurodivergent brain and how limited my capacity for attention actually is, it continues to be a dear lesson for me. And also just the process of aging and really getting to learn how limited my energy is. And rather than letting that be a source of despair, to return to that preciousness of, okay, let me use the resource that I have wisely and well, and to ride that balance of understanding our paradox, that we are limited and limitless, that we have wide access to so much world wisdom and only so many hours in a day, and a physical body that needs to rest, and that we are living in an age and a world where so much is possible, technologically, interpersonally, where we could be on the brink of a great renaissance. And also, we're losing our forests and our capacity to breathe. And, we're experiencing multiple overlapping disasters and crises, and collapses. And having the breath and the softness, well-boundaried softness, and the wideness to hold all of that without getting lost in it. And then hone in, given all of these possibilities, what are the stories that I choose to tell? Humans, with our thumbs and our tongues and our complicated brains, have such capacity to be precise, to be specific. Hundreds of languages with the same mechanisms, same organs and bones, hundreds of languages that we know of. And that, looping back to the beginning of how breath and words can be both conscious and unconscious, the stories we tell, we're telling stories all the time, whether we're aware of them or not. The stories may be, I can't, I'm too old, I'm too fat, the system is too strong, I have to. The stories can be, I'm going to the pharmacy to get my prescription, or the story can be, I'm going on a side quest to the apothecary. The story can be, I've got to deal with my neighbor's kids throwing stuff in my yard. Or the story can be, the neighboring brigands have decided to teach me about living in community. And it's a delicate place because it's not, and as I named at the beginning, we're not trying to live in falsehood. Now, there is a place for fantasy, and I think that visionary fiction is helpful in enabling us to imagine what we cannot yet see. And even in our day-to-day realities and the inescapable, mundane moments of our lives, we have an opportunity in how we frame our experiences to invite moments of the mythic in every day, to affect our own consciousness and the greater web by our thoughts and our words. And scientists are coming to understand what mystics have known for a long time, which is that the world is vibration. And the fact that there's only a few creatures who have so much flexibility with the sounds that we make. It's like whales and dolphins and hyenas and a handful of others. Most other creatures that make sound have a song that they sing, and it may change, but all of the creatures of that species sing that song. Even whales, if I understand correctly, and please forgive me if my science memory is off of this, but from what I remember of whales, they're all singing the same song at the same time, just in different parts of the ocean. And that's a whole, I could tangent on that for a long time, just the beautiful like collective connection to the web that means. But we as individuals get to choose the sounds that we say within a field that is made of vibration. We are resonating our chamber bodies to create and send out vibration, either simply as electrical thought energy or as verbal auditory energy. And there are billions of us, so each word we say is only a drop in a bucket. And yet those drops add up over time. And if enough of our drops are going in one bucket or the other, that is going to put a little more gravity in the direction of what we're saying. And so if our breath and our stories are only ever shallow, we and everyone we affect will miss out on the depth of truth and connection possible if we breathe a little deeper, if we listen a little more clearly to the longing of our souls and the part of us that still remembers what it is to dance under the moon. Now I'm going to invite us into a writing exercise. So we have a little bit of practical application of our class today. So if you have something to write on, paper and pen, or tablet or computer, or whatever enables you to put words to paper. If that's not the way that you like to record, you could also use a voice app and do it on your phone, whatever enables you to put words onto something that you can look at or listen to later. And we're going to start simple. It's just, in my body, I feel. In my body, I feel. And the rule of this is to not think, to just write or speak, let it come out of you. If you get stuck, write the prompt again. In my body, I feel. I love in the moment. I love when I offer these prompts and at first people are like, oh, wait, I need to do something. And then it's like, yes, we're here to learn together. And I saw this quote recently that most people are, or a lot of people are looking for communities and often end up in audiences. And it really, really sat with me. And I know the nature of, especially this shorter class today, but also Zoom, online teaching in general, is it would be so easy for this to become just another thing that you consume. And so I want to invite and include, today, at least a little taste of you also be creating. And then in the course, we'll be doing some creation work every class. But for this moment, I want to invite you to look back over what you've written and notice what jumps out at you as what feels both true and what you want to feed. So it's a delicate discernment of honesty and also recognizing and harnessing the power of the words that you, in this case, write, and choosing to repeat the ones you want to reinforce. And this is just a little taste of a longer process that I offer for poetry writing specifically, but I believe it also applies to almost any kind of intentional writing. But just to touch on it today, we're going to rewrite a line or two, or might be just a word of what you're pulling out of what you just wrote in that longer moment that has a little sparkle around it for you, that you want to remember, that you want to retell, that you want to increase in some way, that you want to empower by repeating it in your mind at first and hearing it again. And then perhaps that could be distilled into what we could call an affirmation, a phrase that you will say to yourself. So, for example, what I got to for myself was, I feel the sense of possibility when we come together. I feel the personal and collective within my body. And so how I would distill that into an affirmation would be, I feel the collective wisdom in my body. I feel the collective wisdom in my body. And it's close to what I first wrote, what I first arose when I asked myself that prompt. And it's feeding in the direction of how I want to grow, what I want to grow in the world. I feel the collective wisdom in my body. And now I'm going to repeat that to myself throughout the day and see what happens. So invite you to play with that as just a little tool for yourself. Maybe if you don't have a daily writing practice, definitely strongly encourage you to write at least a little bit every day, whatever your art, whether or not you consider yourself an artist or a writer, but especially if you have any interest in storytelling, giving some attention to the practice of writing each day has just a whole world of gifts that are only revealed to yourself over time, but I can't recommend it highly enough. And this prompt could be one that you return to for yourself, this process of, in my body, I feel, and it doesn't have to be long. You could write that on that for 3 or 4 minutes and then go back over and ask, okay, what is a sentence or two in here that feels true and also has a sense of possibility that I want to feed, that I want to grow. And then can you distill that into a line for yourself, a spell, if you will. So spelling rather, and both and. So I'd love to open up if there are any questions. We have a little bit of time for either questions or sharing, anything that arose for you in our time together so far that was really interesting or surprising. Or if you have a question about anything I said, or if you have a question about the course that's going to start on Monday.
I have a burning question. I so appreciate you speaking about that creative channel and how the muse is that, like, the energy of life will flock to you. I feel like sometimes if you're one of those people that you're like, I'll be a creator, all different things will come. Like, it will all come. And I was curious, I feel your clarity and your focus and your intention about what spells you are casting in the world, the power of your words. And I was curious how you practice discernment. Like, have you ever had a story come to you or something come to you where you say, I see you and no?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Yes. And actually, as I get older and both honor the sensitivity of my own body more and feel like we are in a place of precarity as a species for a number of reasons, it becomes even more important to practice that discernment. And learning how to say no, especially as a female socialized person and a Black person and just someone who has a lot of marginalized identities, has been a deep and lifelong practice of reclamation. And knowing that my no might lead to persecution and might cause people to, at the very least, not want to be my friends, and at the worst, try to harm me, there's a lot there. But specifically around this, so much of it comes back to listening to my body and the facile, intuitive, intelligent, adaptive creature that I get to inhabit for a handful of decades. And the more I listen, the more my yeses and nos become clear. And the more, when I hear a story, I, become like a lightning rod isn't quite the word, but like a ding, there's a zing. I don't know what words for it in this moment, but there's like a zing of like, I can feel when something is true. At least for me, it may or may not be universally true, but I can feel when something is true for me. And the more I honor that, the more I can feel it. And then when things don't feel true, sometimes it's a matter of, I'm reminded of the etymology of the word sin, which means to miss the mark. And so, a lot of the times when we experience something, also toxic has a similar kind of etymology where it's like it's close enough to the truth that it's actually dangerous. But within that proximity is also the possibility of like, oh, there's more in here. So if I feel something that's a no, unless it's like I need to protect myself and get out of the situation or whatever. But if it's just I don't believe that story, I try to practice curiosity and be like, okay, why, what is this hitting in me that it's a no? What is the perhaps pain or fear underneath the story that person is perpetuating? The little bits of tuning into, our current political landscape and things like trying to ban books and things where I'm like, my first instinct is like, that's not you. I want nothing to do with your stories. And then how I survive is to find the compassion of like, oh, okay, you're hurting and scared. And that's actually the story you're telling. And I don't want to perpetuate that story, but it helps me to be able to question it and be curious about it, even as I hold, a healthy distance from your version of the truth.
I so appreciate it. I feel like that's a situation where our our modern day creators are faced with in a way that story carriers aren't. I've gone to some elder teachers with that question because I've been haunted by it myself. And they looked at me with these glazed eyes because they don't have to choose, because they're carrying old stories and they don't have to choose in the same way, I think, as people who are creating in real time are. And I so appreciate your specificity around discernment.
Well, and learning to listen to, I would say, an older, deeper, vaster voice is a practice in and of itself. And I've spent a lot of time around fires and in ceremony, and just even daily meditation helps with that clarity. And I delete all the apps off my phone regularly. I have had to learn to protect my brain because I have a tendency towards addiction and the attention gets grabbed and all of that. And so some of it is also just the like, don't go to the place where the addictive chemicals are hijacked, like just don't participate. And it's tricky, being a creator in this world. There's finding that balance of needing to engage so that people know that I'm here and can come learn from me, or at least want to collaborate with me, or so I can do my work. But that's part of why I named it earlier, like that. The skill of focus and the skill of discernment is one of the most important ones to cultivate today.
I love that you get rid of the apps off your phone regularly. Over there. So this is our fourth day together. for the Sacred Storytelling Summit. And sometimes someone taught yesterday, and their class isn't coming till May. Talk about like need gratification. But you lucky dogs, Niema starts her class on September 18th, which is just 4 days away from now. I can't believe how soon that is. Or is it the 19th? I don't remember. Anyway, it's one of those days, 18th. And, when we look at, I'll send it out soon enough, but it's the spiral of what is it to be a sacred storyteller. And at the very beginning, it's court your muse. That's literally the beginning, like developing a relationship with the creative life force. And so I love that Niema is literally the first class that begins for the school, this process of what is it to really open your channel. I mean, the words that you sung were so lyrical. I was like emailing all these people while you were going. I was like, oh my God, you've got to get into this class. It's like music, and not everyone knows how to use words like music. Not everyone knows how to feed and nourish both their own souls and those of others. And when I think about what's happening in the world right now, and this, new character in all of our lives, which is AI, and what that's doing to the way that we relate to each other, and what that's doing to the way that we relate to our own creative impulses. I think now more than ever, having these places where I love what you said, it's not about being an audience. We don't need any more passive people, What we need are people who are coming alive to their passion, to their purpose. And to me, this happens through the simple act of creativity. It's where we get to know the absolute best parts of who we are as humans. So I'm just so excited about this class, and I'm so excited and delighted that you're offering it. And if there's any questions, I definitely recommend staying on and asking. And if there's also right now, as we're coming towards the end of this class, I recommend you anchoring in, like, what are you walking away with? What have you received? And this is a practice, oftentimes when we hear a story, we'll talk back to it. And it's called feeding the story. In the same way, in this kind of way, we're in this Zoom way, it's like nourishing our gorgeous teacher and nourishing our conversation, feeding our collective conversation and our collective memory, because each of you caught different threads. I had a teacher one time, Stephen Jenkinson, he said, I'm going to shoot arrows out into the room, and some are going to land and some are going to fall. So if you could be so generous as to share which arrows have landed in you, what are you walking away with? How are you feeling right now? Oh my gosh, it's just coming in. Can you have one more singing moment to the beautiful Niema? I'll be quiet. They're saying be quiet, Leah. Have Niema talk more. So he's saying discernment and to yearn, surprise my joy. Diana saying too much, so much received. Thank you. The exercise is powerful. And I love that you walked us through how to create affirmations and a spell. The storyteller is a bridge, nourished. Yeah. So I will respond to that request for more music from Niema.
Yeah. I do want to allow space just in case there's someone other than me or Leah who wants to give your voice to the room. Okay. Well, the last piece that I'll share for today is a metaphor that came when I started teaching about language and internalized oppression specifically. And we'll get into this more in my class that I'm be teaching in March, which is the wild rebirth of living language. But looking at the ways, and I touched on a little bit today of how, English has been used as a tool of colonization, and modern English came to being through global colonization and war and oppression. And that yet it's what most of us have to work with, and it's still, one of the primary global languages. And so telling stories in these days, attempting to heal the wounds of language when what we have is that same language, is like trying to repair a broken bowl when all we have is a hammer. We have shards. We've lost the village. None of us in living memory have had a truly deeply intact, at least not in, outside of maybe a few indigenous cultures. Most of us in living memory have had very little experience, I'll say, if any, of a truly intact experience of village life, of being connected with each other, of getting to live every moment of our days in obvious expressed relation with the web of life around and within us. So we have these shards and we have the hammer. And at first it could seem hopeless. We just keep hurting each other and ourselves. But if we can expand our perception, if we can imagine beyond what we can actually see in this moment and bring that vision through our bodies into being with delicate, tender, loving, and careful attention, precision, discernment, patience, and a little bit of heat, we can melt down that hammerhead and make a kind of glue. Perhaps it even sparkles in the sunlight. And we can use that handle and spread the hot metal glue on the shards. Careful, don't cut yourself, don't burn anyone. But piece by piece, intentional interaction by intentional interaction, carefully chosen word by carefully chosen word, we can put those pieces together. And at the end, we'll have something that might not resemble the original bowl at all, but might be a vessel that could hold that which feeds life. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow. Thank you so much. And oh, what an honor for you to be with us today. And there's something that happens, and I'll just speak to when I was always a storyteller, just like you. Everyone here was always a storyteller. It's like we're born with it. And then I remember one of the very first storytellers that I came into relationship with, where I saw him speak, and it activated these chords that were living inside me that hadn't been touched yet. And all of a sudden, then that got to live in me, and I got that much more access to who I am as a storyteller. And I think of Niema as one of those people, like you're in her presence, and that kind of beauty and way, it's a beauty way of being with words. It's like it's a transmission. And so if you're in this sensibility where you're like, wow, I want to touch words that way, or I want the words to come and tickle my senses that way, then wow, 6 whole weeks of getting to be in your creation space. What a gift, what a way to go into our fall, into our autumn. I'll put the link again right here. You'll get emails. And if there's any questions, we will, we'll be here, and you can definitely ask questions. I'm going to turn off the recording now. But here's what I'm going to do, because let's do a proper send-off, because we like to do good send-offs, right? So let's bless this good woman. I invite everyone to, in just a good second, to take yourselves off mute and give a big hoot and a holler and sing a song or do whatever it is. And then if there are any questions, just stay on, and Naima will be here to answer them.
Thank you.
On a rock.
Oh, thank
The
you.
whales are with you in the depths of my
Of love and
thank you.
truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love,
Karen,
love, love being
Karen.
awakened by you.
Aloha and mahalo.
Thank you. Blessings. Kela Kesla. Kela Kesla.